Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Every Day's a Train Wreck. I am your host, Marley Major, and it sure is a train wreck today already. I am super excited to introduce you to someone who I think is I know he is the most productive person on the planet. Just stand down, Tinka. You got nothing. And Ari Meisel. So, Ari, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. And boy, is it the perfect time to chat with you since you are now an EMT on top of it. And we have fires raging all over Southern California. So welcome and hi.
Hi, Marley. It's good to see you. I've been an EMT for 14 years, actually, so it's not a new thing. But I appreciate it. It's not a new
thing, but I don't think that was you weren't doing that full time. Were you?
I mean, I'm still not. I'm technically a volunteer still. But it definitely takes a lot of time. It's something I love. It's probably one of my biggest passions is EMS.
And how did you get started in that before we get into the whole productivity piece? How did you just say, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do?
They're actually related. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 23, right? And that's sort of the genesis of my whole story in a lot of ways. And in the process of overcoming Crohn's, one of the things I decided to do was try to learn as much as I could about the human body in as many ways as possible. So I actually became a yoga instructor, like a certified yoga instructor. Mm-hmm. And I think it felt like a little late for me to try to go to medical school at that point, but EMS and becoming an EMT seemed like the next best thing. And also it was like I had aging family members and my wife and I were going to start having kids. So it felt like the right thing to learn about. And I started volunteering with a squad in New Paltz afterwards, a little bit in upstate New York. And my very, very first call was a fairly serious one and just hooked me. And I love it. I've worked with 7 different EMS agencies over the years now. And I'm currently the vice president of the Princeton First Aid and Rescue.
Of course you are. What is the difference between EMS and EMT? I'm saying EMT and then you're saying that's so challenging.
No, you're right. No, EMS is Emergency Medical System, right? So in that you have work in EMS. There's basics, which is what I am. There's EMTP, which is the paramedics, which are slightly higher level. And there's a couple other ones, but that's all EMS.
Okay. Well, the irony, just listening to you talk, which is I am having flashbacks because Ari could not be the more different parent than I am. While Ari's oh, we're going to start to have kids, so I'm going to become an EMT. And I am literally if there's blood involved, it has to go to the nanny. I cannot, right? I'm please, kids, do not ever have anything happen to you because even being the daughter of a doctor, it's oh God, I just love the preparedness. And I love how you're it's all related. Yeah. Okay. There you go. And then I love how you're hooked. The first thing, if I had some traumatic call, I would need to rescue a kitten if I were an EMT in order to continue to do it. But what exactly hooks you about it? I don't want to say it that way, but that's how it's what exactly makes this oh, yay.
This is the funny thing is I joke about, I sort of joke about this, but it's not really a joke. So I have 5 kids and I have a lot of stuff going on in my life. And as vice president, I have a lot of responsibilities throughout the week with the rescue squad because we're a nonprofit. There's all sorts of stuff that we have to deal with. But the actual time when I'm on an ambulance, I do that one night a week right now from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. on either a Friday or a Saturday. And that is that's the thing I need for my mental health every week.
Why? What? I literally hear a siren and I'm saying my rosary and I'm hiding under my duvet. You got to go into detail.
I know. Well, I'm going to.
Okay.
So the thing that's so interesting for me about it is, stress in many ways got me to the place that I was at with Crohn's disease. I really do believe that. And I still talk about that, how stress is such a huge inflammatory component in everybody's life. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say it's all related, but because less doing really came out of that idea of trying to create a systematic way of dealing with stress and overwhelm, right? One of my courses is called Overwhelmology. And at some point, and I've spoken about this, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this, but you can do all sorts of things to be more efficient. You can do things to plan and put systems in place, which we do. But at some point, you also have to work on raising your set point in terms of how much stress you can handle. right? So we need to like become more resilient in that way because again, all the systems in the world could do it, but in many cases, like you ultimately have to be able to bounce back from stressful situations. So this is like throwing yourself into the fire. EMS, for people who have not worked in EMS, it's almost indescribable, the things that I've seen, the crazy scenarios I found myself in. I have probably walked into 700 different houses at this point in my career that I've, and you never find somebody in the same place. And as much as we like to say, like nothing would surprise me at this point. There's always something that can surprise you. And if we have a chance, I can share a couple of those
tell me some of those. Like, I mean, the thing is called Every Day is a Train Wreck. So tell me what some of those surprises are. Like, to me, the biggest surprise would be like, oh my gosh, people are really sloppy, or, oh wow, they're hoarders. Like, what are your, that's the only place I go to.
Well, so you can choose your own adventure here. We can go sad, we can go funny, we can go scary. Let's try. I'm going to go the medium. Let's go scary. Okay. So I work in Princeton right now. I volunteer in Princeton, and Princeton we have some variety of stuff, but it's a fairly affluent community, and there's Princeton University. Like, we don't see really horrendous stuff very often. 2 years ago, I was also at the same time working in Trenton EMS.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so Trenton, if you're not from New Jersey, the best way I can describe Trenton is if you've ever seen the movie The Hurt Locker and you're looking at like Afghanistan, like that's
Fallujah.
Or Fallujah, it might have been. That's what Trenton kind of feels like in a lot of ways. It's just been sort of unfortunate scenarios that have put it in that situation. And so you see some really, really bad stuff. And there's very limited resources. So like I've worked in New York City also, where it's one of the craziest EMS systems there is, but you also have enormous amount of resources. So every call you go to, there's police, there's fire, there's other EMS. Like, whereas in Trenton, you're kind of on your own. And so
interesting.
We wear bulletproof vests in Trenton.
No way.
Yes. And so it's the only place I've ever been where usually when you're going to an EMS call, and you're with your partner, you have the dispatch details, you're discussing what you're going to do. So, okay, this is a cardiac call. So we're going to grab the cardiac, we're going to grab the AED, we'll grab the suction, we'll do this, or it's this call, we need the pediatric thing, whatever. Trenton's the only place I've ever been where we pull up and the captain would look at me and be like, get ready to fight.
Fight?
So, yeah. So I've fought patients there. We had a patient who was on some kind of drugs that was making him extremely strong and very boisterous. And
oh, bless you. That gracious word. I mean,
and also,
and you're built like, I mean, I would not want to get in a fight with you. I mean, on my best day, let alone.
Well, and this was actually, so that typical of the scenario there. I was there for 3 months before I had my bulletproof vest because they weren't available. So we're holding this guy down, and I got distracted by something. I looked away for a second, and I was at his feet, and he was able to get free and kick me in the chest with both feet out of the back of the ambulance. We weren't moving at the time. And a cop basically like shoved me back and was like, get back in there. And so
the cop's like, I don't want to deal with it. That's why he's like, yeah, everybody back in the cabinet.
Exactly. Yeah. We had another call where there was a cardiac arrest, and we were in a person's bedroom. And the bedroom was probably 8 by 8 feet and had a queen size bed in it. And the guy was on the floor, and there were 8 of us in the room working on him doing CPR. And for some reason, the family was upset about something and was trying to get in to stop us. So the cops had to barricade us in the room.
It's called life insurance policy. That's very simple answer as far as I'm concerned, but okay, keep going.
Yeah. And so that's we're doing CPR and people are banging on the door with something, and there's fighting and shouting outside. And it's like, I'm trying to save this person, but if they break the door down, we're going to have to fight, and there's nowhere to go. I never felt scared in those scenarios. That's the thing. But I think that those are like, that's possible. That could be.
Keep going. So when you say you weren't scared, I mean, you obviously have had a ton of training. Obviously, a certain personality goes into this, et cetera, et cetera. Were your coworkers at the end, were they like, oh yeah, I wasn't scared either?
I've had people quit after calls and be like, I'm done. I'm not doing this again. I've seen that. Particularly during COVID, I saw that a few times actually, where people were just like, we'd have to put on Tyvek suits and full gear and everything. And they're just like, I'm not doing this again.
Because, and why? Because they thought it was going to be a simpler process, because they're too fat to be in Tyvek, because they all the above. I mean, they're worried they're going to get caught.
Yeah, I think, people are worried like they're going to catch something. They're going to bring it home to their family. I mean, I had a call where a woman was shot 9 times, and we saved her, actually. She was okay. But, there's different shows and different movies that portray this stuff in very different ways. And almost all of them are very inaccurate. But, we finished that call and my partner and I look at each other and we're both like covered in blood. And so we just clean each other off. She was pregnant. Oh. Meanwhile,
my God.
We're like doing 360s, just wiping each other down. And then another call came in and we get back to work, and it's like, I know that's not normal, but there's something about that really gives me a lot of perspective on like everything else that happens in my life. And I find that really helpful.
Does your wife find it really helpful? Like, I mean, how is your wife just like, oh yeah, baby, head out there for another day in your Tyvek suit and your blood-covered smarm? I mean, what is she?
Yeah, she doesn't like gory details, so I don't give her those. She usually hears more of the funny, weird ones.
And then she's okay? Honey, run off to the circus?
Yeah. I mean, it's one night a week that she's asleep, so she's not, necessarily hearing it. I mean, during COVID, particularly, we were in upstate New York. We had a house up there, and I was working in a rural EMS service. So I was one of 3 EMTs for a town of 3,000.
Oh my gosh!
So in that situation, I was on call 24/7. I had a pager, and I had all the gear in my truck. That was really fascinating because, especially during COVID, in that particular system, because every EMS system is different, I would respond directly to the call and usually get there by myself before someone from this, like one of the older firemen, could come and bring the ambulance. So I'd walk into a house with very little information,
Like with your Chevy full of supplies?
My Dodge Ram.
Okay, keep going.
So because it was a relatively small town, we'd see a lot of repeat people. And there was one particular patient that requested me a couple times.
Okay, pause for station identification. Yes, this is audio. I'll put like clips on social media. Ari is very good looking and in very good shape. I'd like to request Ari for my private fire department or whatever right now. I hope his wife isn't listening. But I mean, so everybody there's no question why they'd be requesting Ari, especially considering what other, Dodge Rams are full of stuff up there. So I don't know his former partners, but I can only imagine. Okay, so she requests you for mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and then what happens? Okay, yeah.
So the story, because that patient is the reason that my business is the way it is now and why I actually stopped the operations that I had at the time. I don't think you were a client at that time. So basically this woman was declining and she was older and had brain cancer. And I think part of it was she was a little bit confused, but if I didn't show up, she would call like every week for what we call a lift assist. So somebody fell, they need to get picked up. It's usually no big deal, but it's something that EMS handles. And she would say like, I want to
marry Ari?
Well, no, she said something about my blue eyes.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph. So I was right all along. So, by the way, He's rolling his eyes as I'm saying this stuff. Like, first of all, A, like he's never heard it before. B, like exactly. Like, I called it. I might as well be. This might as well be called like the psychic network, the pay per dollar. Okay. All right. Keep going. You're okay. There you go.
So, well, anyways, there was this call where she had requested me and I actually did come to that one. I was going to go anyway, but I was going to this one. And there were other people in the room, and then I showed up, and they wanted to just talk to me. And again, this is COVID. It was like very dramatic. It was like in a movie.
I'm sure it was, especially for her, by the way. She's thinking, these are my last breaths, and I'd like him to be in front of old blue eyes. Okay.
Yes. So I sit down next to the bed. I tear off my mask, and I take off my gloves. I'm holding her hand, and she says, she's talking about her. No, well.
Very wealthy.
She said, he's been hurting me. And she's talking about her husband, who's much older than her. Like, they were both in their 80s. And so the thing is like, that kicks off a whole chain of events in EMS that we have to deal with. And so I had to stay with her. We had to get her out and bring a social worker. And it was the whole thing. And I don't think it turned out to be necessarily the case, but regardless.
Yeah, because she was hoping, she knew that was going to trigger something. And you're in your Dodge Ram. And she's thinking you're going to snuggle right up and take her home. And you got... That's exactly what she's thinking. She can have an apartment in the city and she's going to start feeling a lot better. Yeah. Okay. Well, now that I know that that's the signal that I have to give the next hot fireman EMT I come in, I'm going to be,
It changes the mood.
Sure does.
And so it was like very impactful. I think so I'd seen her like 6 times for different things. So,
well, you're in a relationship with her, Ari. I mean, in her mind, listen, crazy chicks. I've been one of them. You're in a relationship. You two she wants you to be exclusive. Keep going.
So it was like a bonding moment, right? So then a month later, or 2 months later, I think, there was a call to her house, and I was actually out of town. I was in New York, but we get it on our phones. And because I wasn't there and the captain from my squad wasn't around, another town had to come in and get her. So there was very little information. But from the dispatch information, it looked like she had died. And I remember I get this message, and then I get a Voxer message from my COO, who you know, Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about something, it wasn't trivial, but it was something that was just not a major thing. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I had become so replaceable in the business, and as we do by design, that I had gotten so far away from coaching, which is what I really love, which is working with people.
Yeah.
And it was that literally I was like, I'm shutting down the program. And it turned out she wasn't dead. She actually died like a month later. But there's only been 3 times in my career where I've actually like cried after a call. And that was one of those times, because otherwise you have to compartmentalize really well. But there's been 3 times, once with her and twice with kid patients that just got me.
So do you develop that compartmentalization skill?
I think so, because I think that a lot of people, and CEOs and entrepreneurs particularly, and you probably can relate to this. Compartmentalization for a lot of people, I feel like, means you put it in a box and you just, that's it, you forget about it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's not the case. Compartmentalization only works when you say, like, now I'm doing something right now, but at a later time, I am going to have to open this box and deal with this thing and unpack it. And then I do that. And so, like, you know, those couple times where I really had to like just let it out was like driving home from a shift at the end of the night, you know, and I was just bawling in the car ride.
So you, when you're saying compartmentalize, you mean like literally like in the moment, you're like, let's get the job done. But at some point the box opens and you got to let it out. Like compartmentalization doesn't mean you're a special person who now just can like bury the safe. I mean, it eventually comes out like it does for all of us.
Exactly. So you have to make that happen. You can't just wait, because it will come out, and you're better off controlling when that happens than not.
And then so when you let it out, then does it come back later too? Like, do you still, like if we got off this call or this taping and then, you know, let's say you had time and you went for a hike or something, is that something that could trigger you to start thinking about it and you'd go down that path again? Or are you like, okay, I got this. Like, I don't need to revisit.
Yeah, I think it's the second, because the way I've seen it sort of come back up again is more in terms of informing clinical decisions. You know, it's like more like, this happened this last time. It was emotional at the time, but like, this is what we did right and this is what we did wrong. And now I'm in the situation. Also, like, one of those situations was a 6-year-old girl, which is very similar to my daughter at the time, who was 6, who is no longer 6. So, you know, if I get like an 8-year-old girl, maybe it'll be different. But it's interesting how people and parents will sort of like expose themselves and become vulnerable to an EMS professional within 3 seconds. You know, people just hand me their kids in their car accident or something. They just hand the kid over. You know, you see people completely naked in the bath, like, or hopefully in the bath in some cases.
Well, so, Blue Eyes again. Yeah. I'd like to request Ari. Is he working tonight? Yeah. Yeah.
I always try to bring a smile. Well, because the truth is that the majority of cases are not life or death. They're bad, maybe, or they're painful, or they're scary, but they're not usually like traumatic in that way. You know, it's not the same thing as like I'm in the middle of a kitchen doing chest compressions on somebody, and like his daughter's hand reaches out and grabs my ankle and asks me to tell her what's happening. You know,
so okay, just out of curiosity, what kind of percentage of them? And I know that's not going to be totally accurate, but like what percentage of these are, you know, chest compressions versus the cat in the tree or whatever, you know what I mean? What are the really serious ones?
It all depends on where you are, right? So like Trenton would be the worst example, because again, in Trenton, a lot of people are using EMS as their primary healthcare provider, basically, right? They're just waiting until it's so bad that they can't do anything. And you also have people, especially again during COVID, you'd have like people with psychiatric issues that were not on their meds because they couldn't get them. So in a place like Trenton, I'd say maybe 50%, 60% were really bad things. We had a lot of overdoses. You know, we're doing Narcan, we're doing chest compressions we're doing a cardiac arrest that were also overdoses, all sorts of things. Whereas in Princeton, I'd say that maybe it's 10% that are really, really bad.
How much Narcan is in Princeton? Because I could see that with the mommy set. I'd like to have Ari and I'm, you know, stroking out on heroin or whatever.
I have not. So I've had a couple overdose calls here in Princeton, but they've been kids who were trying to get high on like Robitussin or something. That's still a thing, apparently. That was a thing when I was in high school.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay.
You don't see a lot of opioid overdoses here. But you know what's fascinating? So there's a lot of opioid overdoses are really, truly accidental because they're so strong that you'll have an old person who takes, fentanyl normally, but then they happen to take a pill and a half by accident because they forgot. And that's enough to push them over the edge. There have been cases of people overdosing, having an opioid overdose on Imodium. You know what Imodium is, right?
What? Yeah. How is that an opioid?
Yeah, it is, because it helps relax the smooth muscles of the digestive tract.
So we're going to have every drug addict on the planet listening to this, because as far as I know, you can buy Imodium over the counter, right?
You can. The amount that you would need to effectively have an overdose is the same amount that you would need to likely cause cardiogenic shock. So it's unlikely that you're going to survive if you do that intentionally, but it has happened.
Some more, or how does that happen?
Yeah, or they just don't remember, right? They took it, and like an hour later, they're like, I don't feel good. I'm going to take some Imodium. Like an hour later, I don't feel good. I'm going to take some. Like that happens.
Okay, so you're doing this one night a week, right? And then I have that right? Or is it like one night a week plus kind of,
one night a week on the ambulance. The rest of the time is like administrative kind of, community engagement stuff that I do as vice president.
Is it a bake sale? A tie? I'd like to recruit you.
Yeah, a lot of
move to Princeton because.
So, like I said, every EMS service and agency and area is different. In our system, the EMS squad is not a municipal agency. We are a standalone nonprofit, and our billing revenue only covers about half of our budget. So we do a lot of fundraising and grants and stuff like that. But also, so I teach most of our community class. So like I'll teach Narcan classes. I have one I'm teaching at Princeton next week. I teach Stop the Bleed classes. And then I'm a first aid instructor too, so we do community first aid classes. There's some liaising that we do with the fire department, with the police department, with the mayor's office. And I run all of our social media and all of our recruiting. And I've created, as you might expect, an automated recruiting process.
I am shocked, absolutely shocked to hear that there is an automated process for this.
Yeah, we had a really bad application process before, and now it's really good.
I'm also shocked. So let's talk about these automated processes. Because I think you're a genius with all of this stuff. And I just still remember being in New York in one of our like groups, and you're talking about Monkey Learn and going on. And I took copious notes. And I feel like I should print them and memorialize them on my wall or something, because basically all of that was where we are with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, the stuff that we're able to do now with AI is absolutely mind-blowing. I think that initially a lot of people had this idea that it's going to replace jobs and stuff like that, which honestly it probably could at some point, but that's the wrong way of looking at it. The best way to look at it right now, because then you have those people who are like, oh, it's like a barely competent grad student. It's a time saver. That's what people should be looking at GPT as right now, is it's a time saver. So I have a custom GPT that I've made for every one of the different organizations I'm involved in. The Rescue Squad, the Municipal Committee on Affordable Housing, Racial, Economic, and Social Equity, the school board, right? And so each one of these has hundreds of pages of PDFs and docs and Excel spreadsheets and things that I can at any time be like, what's the thing about the thing? And it can better inform me in that way. It's like multiple external brains, and I absolutely could not be participating in these various different things that I'm involved in if it wasn't for that.
So, okay, because part of me thought you were going to say, oh, AI, so yesterday I'm on to AP now or something. So you haven't graduated from AI. There isn't anything we need to know right now that's going to happen in 7 years, or is there? Oh my gosh, you should see his face. He's like, oh, okay, let me tell you. So tell us the next thing.
I think the two big things that we're going to be seeing more and more of, and we're starting to see it, is the voice agents getting better and better. So like, for example, I helped create this thing. One of the issues that we have in Princeton, and I'm sure many school districts do, is that you have families of different languages or different languages home that have moved here, and we need to be able to serve those communities. So we've tried this thing out where it's a phone number that you can call, and it will tell you, if the school's closed or anything like that. But whatever language you speak, it will respond to that language naturally. So you don't have to press 1 for English, 2 for Spanish, 3 for Chinese, whatever. You just speak. And that's a very, very basic use. But the voice agents are going to, and it's very quick too. Like you'd speak And then within, I think it's like 0.3 seconds, it's responding. The other one, though, is when you can start to have agents, as they're called, where they will actually execute on tasks, right? So ChatGPT can help you look up a flight and compare and contrast, but it's not proficient at booking those flights right now.
Right.
So that's where we start to get into the idea of replacing like virtual assistants and then replacing coders. And then we do get into that replaceability, but we're still a little ways off from that.
Within 3 seconds or whatever it is, I can start speaking language and it can pick. And so are there any languages that it can't? Is it like the top 5 kind of like we've got Mandarin, but we don't have Slovenian?
No, definitely. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because so one of the things that we have here in Princeton is we have a lot of families that are from Guatemala and, some other countries where most people would assume they speak Spanish, but actually a large percent of the population doesn't speak Spanish. They speak a language like Quiche, which is Mayan or an Incan. I don't want to offend anybody, but yeah, it's an ancient language, or it's not ancient, but it's derived from one of those ancient languages. It has nothing to do with Spanish. And the problem is, particularly with those kids, is that they come here and then they're put in a Spanish class and they don't understand what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, but ChatGPT has Quiche.
Thanks to Ari.
Not quite.
EMT in Princeton. Okay, so what else do you see on the horizon, Nostradamus?
Well, so actually, it's not a new thing, but I think asynchronous communication, which is something I've been talking about, obviously, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I think we're getting more and more ways to do that that we didn't before. And I think hopefully, people are becoming a little bit more comfortable with that. So, for example, one of the things that I built into this recruiting process with the rescue squad that was really a big game changer is asynchronous interviews. So the way that we had it before is that we had to have 2 senior members in person or on Zoom to do an interview with a person real time. And scheduling that was next to impossible.
Yeah.
And also the truth is that, 50% of those interviews don't move forward just because of the way people are. So now I use a tool called Video Ask, where there's a video of me asking a question and then they can respond from their phones with the video. And then I ask another question and there's logic to it. And what I love about it too is that we have people who are applying who are already working in EMS. So they'll do the interview at 3:30 in the morning because they're out and about and they've got time.
Build this program or no?
No, that Typeform came out with that like 7 years ago. But now you can add in AI logic to it, right? So you can say like it can tell if the person's reading from a script or not.
Yeah. See, because the reason this is the whole thing is fascinating to me, but one of the reasons this is fascinating to me is because there's this entrepreneurial TV show that's casting for judges that I just applied to, and I got through some of the rounds, and then they say, we're going to do this, you're going to do these videos. And this was one of the first ones that I had seen where you do interviews kind of like that. But this is it sounds like, does this change the question based on their answers or no? It's the same set of questions for each person.
Yeah, you can. You can't do that based on the video answer, but you can have them answer with video and then you can have like a yes or no or like an ABC, right?
Oh,
so,
wow.
So respond with your natural thing and then just answer really quick. Like, have you been in EMS for less than 1 year, more than 6 years? And then you can change it based on that for sure. Yeah. And it's when I applied to be at this squad, it took 8 months, and I have a lot of experience, by the way. So like it took 8 months for me to get in the door.
Just because of like incompetent.
Yeah. So like they basically sent like reference forms to people and those people didn't get them because they went to spam and there was no follow up, and then I
didn't respond. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we've got it down. I've got it down to like 3 weeks. So, which is really important, right? Because as much as like people might want to be EMTs, the truth is overall, we have seen less and less people want to become an EMT. And a lot of that is because of COVID. But it's in some ways, it's sort of a seller's market in that way, right? So we need to create a customer journey as something we all need to do.
Yeah.
So I don't want somebody hanging out in the process and being like, what's happening with that squad? And then they'll go somewhere else. So it's become really streamlined and moves them through quickly. It follows up when they don't answer. It does all sorts of stuff. And it's all actually run out of Airtable and Zapier. So it's great.
Well, so you do still use Zapier.
I've started using Make a little bit more and more, which used to be Integromat. It's a lot less user-friendly, but you can get a lot more nuance in what it can do. And the thing is that now I can tell ChatGPT, like, this is what I'm trying to do and write the code. And then go put it over and Make. And then they're like, oh, it didn't work. It gave me this error. And it's like, okay, try this code. So like I can do things now with Make that I wasn't technically capable of doing when it came out.
Yeah. And you were, to me, the pioneer of asynchronous communication. I mean, I was like, I can't communicate synchronously, let alone asynchronously. And you mentioned Voxer. So you still do use Voxer.
So all of my coaching is done over Voxer. It's 100% over Voxer. Like literally, there's no Zoom calls, there's no meetings, there's no workshops. It's 100% Voxer. And the sales are done over Voxer too. They have to come to me on Voxer. We have a conversation and then we start working together. So that's why I'm able to do all this stuff and still have, I think I have 24 clients right now around the world, one-on-one.
Wow. And so with the asynchronous coaching, I mean, I'm obviously you vet them or whatever. They just come to you when they have questions and are like, hey, because for those of you who don't know, to me, the best way to describe Voxer is it's like a walkie-talkie. And people say, why don't you just text or use voice memos or whatever? It's a different story. And it's like a repository for your voice messages or your messages back and forth, but you can also send links, photos, etc. But the other thing that I really like is that you can use it on the desktop. Like you can be doing this on your phone back and forth like walkie-talkies. As I'm working out, I can answer something for my staff, appropriate necessarily to huff and puff with the coaching client. So then how do they just ask you questions and then you just respond?
Basically, yes. So there's a framework called the Ultimate KPI, which I think existed at the time when we last worked together. That helps sort of guide the initial interaction. But for the most part, it's like I have clients that I speak to 2 or 3 times a day, every day through Voxer. And then I have ones that I hear from literally like once every 3 months. But what I do is I do a group Voxer broadcast to my private clients, and that's at least once a week. And usually what people will tell me is that either that sparked something that they hadn't thought of, and then they went and worked on it, they came back to me, or right in that moment, they're like, hey, that Voxer today, like I was thinking about that for me. And so it's mostly them coming to me. But then there's that sort of prompt. But to me, that's like the big difference between consulting and coaching. And I've done both, right? Consulting is like, I bring my content to you, you learn it and you integrate it. Coaching is like, you bring me your issues and your content and I guide you. And
how long is your broadcast that you do?
They're anywhere between like 3 to 10 minutes. It depends on what I've got. It's like a private podcast essentially, right? Yeah. But the other thing that's fascinating about it for me is it's actually, I found it to be a much more effective form of coaching, right? Because instead of somebody having like a blow up fight with an employee on a Friday, and then they're waiting till Wednesday for our 12 o'clock 1 hour meeting,
right,
where they've already forgotten about it and 10 other things have happened. They walk out of that meeting and are like, this mother, like I can't, I'm so pissed off and this and that. And so they get it out. And then 3 hours later, I respond with like the perfect 30-second answer that I thought about for an hour.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I promised you would be out on time today. So
thank you.
I could literally have you on with your
the answer is yes.
And your EMT, and you'll probably be a grandfather by the time I talk to you again. So Ari, tell us where people can find you. Where should they go? I cannot emphasize enough how amazing and how I just am in awe. I was always in awe and I still am. And that is saying a lot because I think most people are just dumb as a box of rocks in terms of being in this space. So where can they find you? Where do you want them to go?
Yeah, so everything is at lessdoing.com, but they can also check out voxwithari.com. And then anybody who's listening is welcome to get in touch with me on Voxer. And you should get back in touch with me too on Voxer. I was surprised to get your text.
I think I'm going to get back in touch with you on Voxer. I just get a little scared that maybe there's some other platform that you're using and now, you're going to be like, Voxer, you idiot.
Nope.
Okay. I love it. Ari, keep doing the good work and keep fighting the good fight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your time and wisdom. And I'll Vox you. How's that on that note?
Thank you. Good. Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys. Thank you for everything. Thank you for listening to Every Day is a Train Wreck. Your conductress is signing off. Please make sure you follow the show, like it, comment, so I can put the next one to college. All right. Thank you, everybody.